Hello, my name is Dr. Sidney Freeman, and I'm the host of Saturday Soul. We're so excited that you are with us today. The purpose of the Liberation Movement, which is the umbrella organization that sponsors this program, is to liberate and decolonize Black minds. And we hope that you feel empowered through this broadcast. I would like to encourage each of you that are watching right now, first to tell us where you're watching from, and then if you could start a watch party on Facebook if you're watching on Facebook, but share the link. If you're on YouTube, you can also can subscribe to our channel by going to Sydney Freeman Jr. on YouTube. We ask you to subscribe to have access to more of the content that we're providing related to Saturday Soul and the Liberation Movement family. So, one of the things that we're doing different this year, this is our second year in existence. And so, one of the things that we're being very strategic about is the way in which we frame our discussions moving forward. And a part of that is using a framework that I have developed in my own work called the Black Transformation Model. The Black Transformation Model. So, with that, we're going to hear a little bit more about the model.
The work of the liberation movement is grounded in the Black transformation model. We believe that there is a 5-step process that will lead to the advancement of our people. These steps inform all work that we engage in. The first step is decolonization, which we define as the holistic process of letting go of colonial practices, values, and culture, adopting and returning to indigenous ways of knowing and being. In other words, a change of mindset centering African ways of thinking and living. The second step is abolition. We define abolition as being willing to fight injustice and dismantle practices, systems, institutions, and power structures. The third step is revolution. I define revolution as a fundamental change from the status quo that facilitates new ways of knowing, being, and operating. The fourth step is liberation. To be liberated is to be free from forms of spiritual, psychological, and physical oppression and captivity. The last step is sovereignty. When we say sovereignty, we are stating that we will be committed to supporting and/or establishing Black-owned and operated institutions. So, we take seriously Romans chapter 12, verse 2, where it says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Black transformation is our assignment, and we are committed to help liberate our people spiritually, socially, and psychologically through educational initiatives.
All right. So yes, we have this Black transformation model that we're using. We're happy to have Deborah with us from Maryland, and Dr. Maya Dr. Maya is here. We are so excited to have our special guest with us today in the form of Minister Ronnie Vanderhorst. He is a board member of the Liberation Movement, and we were so excited and extended the invitation for him to come and to share about this notion of covering and on other platforms. He's hinted at this topic of covering and improving the lot of Black males and the way in which Black males support our communities and our families. But it was really important to bring him on to kind of tease that out. This is going to be a 3-part series, so we're really excited for him to really have the time and space to unpack this information. So with that, let's introduce Minister Vanderhorst. All right, Minister Vanderhorst, how you doing today?
I am still the undisputed happiest man in the world. I've
All
been holding
right.
40 years. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Congratulations. We are so happy to have you here and to share this concept of covering. This is something that I've heard you allude to on different platforms, different programs, but I've not had the opportunity to hear you kind of elucidate and pull out and explain some of these concepts. So I myself am excited and can't wait to hear what you have to share over the next 3 months related to this topic. Glad to have Howard Bullard with us and Melinda Moses and others. Dr. Gerald and Ruby Anderson is with us today, and so glad to have a great audience here to hear about what you have to share with us today.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the group as well as to myself. I don't take it for granted, that all of us think alike.
Yeah.
And so this whole aspect of covering, that the title I gave you, Covering Naked and Betrayed, actually deals with Black man-woman relationships. And so we're going to go on a journey with this because it's going to be quite interesting, how this all fleshes out, to see, that we are not a monolithic people, especially males and also females, men and women. So let me just thank you and your wife, Doctors Sidney and Linda Freeman, the founders of the Liberation Movement. And then I also want to preface this with something that I believe is important and necessary to put up front, the antecedent of this presentation today. In this covering series, I'm going to be using narratives, scenarios that are scriptural, cultural, social, relational, as well as many of my own personal revelations. I don't know your beliefs, and therefore, I'm not going to take you for granted. If you are atheist or a pragmatist, agnostic, radical, conservative, or however you self-identify, so be it. So you may view some of the things that I posit as literal, metaphorical, mythological, or even symbolic, and that's cool with me too. But I just want you to critically consider the key elements that I posit for covering. That's all. That's my main inference. So use what you can, put on the shelf what you can use later, and throw in the trash what you don't want to use. I hope that's fair. I have to say this also, that this covering series, I will not pit Black men against Black women and Black women against Black men. We are not adversaries. We are allies with some issues. But my primary interest is the internal work that needs to be done in our Black man-woman marriages and relationships. And brothers, I want us to rethink and reimagine ways that we can have mutually fulfilling Black man-woman marriages and wholesome relationships with our girls and single women. Therefore, to accomplish, acquire, and achieve this, we're going to consider a diversity of factors: historical realities, cultural dynamics, and blatant systemic onslaughts as we explore this sojourn in covering. Here I go. It's often said that Black women are more complicated than Black men. But I'm not sure if that's actually true, based on my work with single Black men and women, as well as Black couples and spouses for over 40 years organizationally. In fact, I think Black men are just as complicated, if that's how you'll define it, and maybe more so when dealing with certain issues. For example, it appears that Black women are more inclined to go outside with their pain, to talk with somebody like a therapist or counselor or psychologist or the like, while most Black men go inside with our pain and we suppress and repress it. Now, understand, later on we'll deal with anything that is suppressed and repressed. Sooner or later we'll rebel, but we'll get to that. But when a brother has trepidation or resistance in going outside with his pain, but going and keeping it inside, that Black men collectively, now I want you to really understand that, because I'm not speaking about Black men individually. It's not all Black men. That's why I am terming it the collective Black males, the collective Black men. But when we have that trepidation and resistance to go outside to seek help, to seek the interventions that we need, much less initiate it, it makes brothers all the more complicated, especially when we have no clue how this reticence or recalcitrance impacts our ability to provide covering to our girls and Black women. And when I say "are," I am not using the possessive sense. So therefore, I believe that it is necessary to begin with one of the most fundamental tenets of Black men covering Black women, and that is active listening. You see, brothers, when I talk about active listening to Black women, I'm talking about actively listening to them without filters. You see, consciously or unconsciously, brothers who don't understand covering don't actively listen, or they use filters when Black women speak. There is the arguing filter and the disrespect filter, the nagging filter, the criticizing filter, and get this one, the punk filter. Yeah, when it seems as if she's trying to punk us. And there's also the affectionate filter. There are a whole lot of other filters too. But brothers quickly categorize what and how Black women are speaking, and then we put it down one of our filters. So you can imagine with those filters, many of them that simply, sisters, go in one brother's ear and comes immediately out the other ear. And the degree of active listening is predicated upon what filters we use when a Black woman is saying something. Sisters, you can be ever so right and true in what you say, and with all the best intentions. But if he puts it into the nagging filter, if he puts what you're saying into the criticizing filter or the disrespect filter or the arguing filter or the punking filter, then it's not going to be processed correctly, or maybe not even at all what you're actually saying. It will simply be filter in, filter out. But get this, if he hears something through the affection filter, brother is all ears then. Yeah. So brothers, covering Black girls and women mandates that we actively listen to them without filters. I'll never forget the time I was driving my girls to school when they were young. And it sounded as if when we were talking, my eldest daughter said something that sounded disrespectful. I said, wait, hold up. I'm looking in the rearview mirror at her. Don't speak to me in a disrespectful tone. She started crying. And she said, but Daddy, you're not listening. I said, listen, what I'm saying to you is don't speak to me in a disrespectful tone. Unfortunately, I had the unmitigating gall to let my daughters out at school with my eldest daughter going into school crying. As I drove off, the Spirit checked me on that. And I could not wait to pick up my daughters, because the Spirit said to me, no matter how your daughter speaks to you, listen to what she has to say. Talk to her about what concerns her. And then at the end of the conversation, by the way, it sounded like you said something disrespectful. How else could you have said that? But I wasn't listening. I put it through my disrespect filter, and I didn't hear what she said. And possibly the whole rest of her day was out of balance because I was not actively listening. And so this past week, I surveyed a variety of Black women from different walks of life, women who I know. Some are married, single, dating, not dating, divorced, widowed, mothers without children, degreed, no credentials, working, etc. And by the way, all of these sisters are not anti-Black men. And I asked them one question to respond to. And this was the question. Do you think Black men collectively cover Black women, married or single? If yes, say how. If no, tell what. Now, there was so many responses. I think I surveyed 35 Black women. And so there were a lot of responses. So I'm only going to share a few with you. And then the next 2 sessions, I will share with you more of their responses. Because I want us to actively listen, which is quintessential to covering our Black girls and women. I will not reveal their names. Response number 1. No, I believe women are expected to cover or hold down their men and children. It feels like many men lack the integrity, not honesty or character, but strength, capacity, and health to cover anyone, even themselves. I believe Black women are groomed to be uncovered. The desire for true covering is frowned upon. Those who espouse things widely, especially in church. Men are championed as head, while women do all the giving and serving except for the apparently important roles. I believe many Black women experience black men as the whiz. So I texted back, I said, break that down for me a little more. What do you mean by the whiz? She said, there is a lot of painful lure around preparing oneself for a man. You must be this. You must have never that. Lots of guys beating their chest about what is required to date, marry a black man, along with a unique mixture of gifts and skills required to keep him. So sisters are out there slaying witches, getting ruby slippers on long voyages, education, beauty, and weight, elocution. Because the worst fate in the world is literally etched in our psyche to live a life without having a man. And that's scary stuff. Only to have so many women cross the line, and these guys lack a great deal mentally, emotionally, financially, etc. Number 2 response. My answer is no. My reason is some fathers have not educated, trained, or empowered on how to be a father for their daughters, because their lack of covering that their daughters didn't get at home, her expectations of men and women relationships are damaged. Women don't have a point of reference. Response number 3. Yes, I believe black men cover black women if he is married to a black woman. Number 4, no, I have no evidence they speak up for us in their private convos. I don't see public posts or displays of support in mass. I don't think many even know what covering means. So it's hard to do something you don't have a concept of. Number 5, collectively, no, I don't think so, because I think black men providing a covering, and it's not the same. I think they would collectively cover if they knew what that really meant. Next, no, they are indecisive, poor decision makers, not sacrificial. Some of our men would like to cover and can't because the spouse is extremely disrespectful. Couple more. Yes, most of the men I know are respectful. That is a cover to me. Respect is a foundation for other good coverage. And this is from a divorced lady. Another one, unfortunately, no. I know many black men that do, but it seems to be a large segment of black men who do not feel compelled to share that collective burden or covering, protecting, and advocating for black women. Next to last that I'll share today. No, it's crazy. I was just crying in my office about an experience with my father this weekend. He told me blankly that if it wasn't for me, he would have left my mother long before. I mean, he has no idea the emotional effect that it would have on me. He thinks it's flattering. He thinks that should make me feel special, but it doesn't. He's moving on a probable third wife, and it's still about what she does for him. I feel black men, I don't think they cover us. Worse, I think they don't love us. I think they just use us. And the last one for today. Woo! This is a complex question. Generally speaking, my answer will be no. I'll quote Brother Malcolm, who said this himself. Quote, "The most disrespected woman in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman." Unquote. Wow. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There'll be more in the next session. So what is covering? How do I process it? How do I define it? How do I look at covering? Covering is a learned principle, process, and position that a Black man prioritizes to protect the spirit, soul, and body of Black girls and women. And it is developed via education, observation, participation, and communication. That's how I define covering. A principle, process, and position of Black men prioritizing to protect the spirit, soul, and body of Black girls and women. So when we look at this aspect of covering, we have to look at it personally, mental, emotionally, culturally, and relationally. And covering always operates from center to circumference, from the inside out. Let's take a peek at my spirit model very quickly. In my spirit model, there is spirit, soul, and body. You see, there's a text in 1 Thessalonians 5:23 that says that your spirit, soul, and body might be blameless. So the divine order of human existence is from center to circumference, from the inside out. All nature functions from the inside out. When I was a young boy growing up in Youngstown, Ohio, I took a razor blade and I slit open an apple seed. And I laid both halves on the table. My natural eye could not see the growth principle within that seed. But if you take that seed and put it into the nurturing environment of the earth, it will begin to germinate and grow. All of nature functions from inside out. So this is the premise of understanding spirit. This slide says, if you don't understand spirit, what it is, its function, and its centrality in relationships, then everything else you think you understand about relationships will only confuse you. I'll run it by again. If you don't understand spirit, its function and its centrality in relationships, then everything else you think you understand about relationships will only confuse you. Because everything flows from spirit. So when you look at the model, if there is something in the next slide that may interrupt a woman's spirit, then her spirit can become weighted, wounded, oppressed, or violated. And because all of nature functions from the inside out, when her spirit is interrupted, it will automatically affect her soul, how she thinks, how she feels, and what she does, her mind, emotions, and will. And the body simply will become the servant and carry it out. So I always use this. You see, a weighted spirit is basically burdens and pressures that a man may put on a woman. A wounded spirit usually comes through words. Women love words, but I'll put an antecedent on that. Truthful words. So if I say something that wounds my wife's spirit, it's a clean wound. If I immediately go back and rectify it, honey, I was wrong. I am sorry. Please forgive me, and give an adequate explanation. But if I say, man, I ain't saying nothing to her, then it becomes an unclean wound, and bitterness and resentment sets into her spirit. An oppressed spirit is only for one purpose, and that's subjugation. There have been wives and women who have been made to feel lowered in dirt. You ain't nothing. You ain't never been nothing. And the put downs, the shamings, the abuses. And then there's the violated spirit. And that's the one that comes through infidelity when brothers are not faithful. Or it can even come through pornography, where the wife or the woman feels inadequate. Or however it comes through these abuses that violate her spirit. So when a woman or wife's spirit is weighted, wounded, oppressed, or violated, she cannot function in a state of normalcy. And the first thing that goes out the window is sexual intercourse. Don't touch me. Brothers, it gets deeper than that. Because once a Black woman's spirit is interrupted to a certain degree, she will cook your food, rear your children, but she has evicted you out of her spirit. And there is no romance or finesse that can get you back in. We can put a fork in you. You're done. Because her spirit has been so interrupted that it affected how she thinks. It affects how she feels. It affects what she does. Now, I know some of y'all brothers think, well, what about the man? Well, let's take care of the sister first. Then we can come back to the man in another session. And so that's foundational in understanding spirit. If we don't understand spirit, what it is, its function, and its centrality in Black man-woman relationships, then everything else we think we understand will only confuse us. So now let's use the Sankofa spirit and go back. You see, Sankofa is a picture of an African Adinkra symbol of a bird facing in one direction, but looking back toward its tail. So we need to go back. Sankofa means to go back and fetch it. Return to the source to move forward. So we're going to have to go back to the African Edenic garden, because that is where covering was what I call lost in paradise. That's what I'm calling this first presentation, lost in paradise. So when you read the Genesis narrative, and again, if there are some people who are just looking at it mythologically, fine, symbolically, fine, metaphorically, fine, or literally. But when we go back to the Genesis narrative in Genesis 3, there was Ha-Adam. That was the name that Yahweh Elohim, the creator, gave to both man and woman, Ha-Adam. The creator never called her Eve, but it was Ha-Adam, man and woman, created he them. And so now they had instructions not to eat from a forbidden tree. They ate from a forbidden tree. So in Genesis 3 and verse 9 and 10, Yahweh Elohim comes into the African Edenic garden looking for Ha-Adam, man and woman. They were hiding. He calls Ha-Adam, where are you? Looking for them. Now, of course, the creator knew where their physical location was. Who can hide from the creator? But in essence, the creator was saying, Ha-Adam, do you know where you are? In the light of the choice that both of you just made, do you really know where you are? And so now they come out of hiding. Ha-Adam, man, says, We hid because we were naked. And the Creator said, who told you you were naked? And why did you do this? Here comes the uncovering of women, starting with Adam. Instead of taking accountability and responsibility for his decision, when you read that Genesis 3 narrative, you will read Adam say, the woman you gave me. He blamed the Creator for the action that he took. He threw the woman under the bus. He uncovered her. He didn't take accountability, because another aspect of covering is accountability, active listening, accountability. But he did not take accountability for his wife. He uncovered her. And from that day forward, like father, like sons, we as black men, we as men have followed our father, Adam. I'm not saying all brothers, but I'm saying to a great extent. And as we break this thing out more and more in our other sessions, we're going to seriously pinpoint some things that are quintessential to understand the factors, the situations that are causatives of uncovering black women. But the author, Pearl Cleage, whose father was Albert Cleage, who really came forth in the 50s and so forth with the Black Messiah. In fact, her dad, Albert Cleage, started the Shrine of the Black Madonna. There are different ones around the country. In fact, I had the privilege of speaking and preaching in the Shrine of the Black Madonna in Atlanta, Georgia, some years ago. But Pearl Cleage wrote a book called Mad at Miles. And she dealt with how Miles Davis was like dog on women. I mean, when you read Miles's history, there are a lot of people who don't understand the brutality and the abuse. And not simply Miles, but she was directing this book toward Miles. And she asked this question: how can they hit us and still be our husbands? How can they hit us and still be our boyfriends and our lovers and our fathers? They can't. Can they? So when we begin to look at the history of the treatment and the mistreatments of many black men toward black women, a lot of it is rooted in what I now call my conceptual framework called the I effect, capital I, the I effect. And that is indoctrination, internalization, and institutionalization. When we deal with indoctrination, indoctrination is not education. For true education will educate us how to think, but indoctrination trains us what to think. Indoctrination always has an agenda. And indoctrination is a portal of entry into somebody else's beliefs, or belief system. So therefore, when black men, as we have been indoctrinated then we get to a point where we begin to internalize what we have been indoctrinated in. And then finally, once we get institutionalized in it, we're like locked in, we're incarcerated into certain mindsets about women, certain lifestyles about women. So when I was growing up, I heard brothers say, yeah, I take a girl from 8 to 80, blind, cripple, or crazy. You know, that's a sick statement, don't you? But the indoctrination led to internalization and then institutionalization. Our behaviors, our lifestyle, our choices and decisions. Here with brothers, some brothers was running trains on young girls, you know, like they skipped school and they went to the brother's apartment or his house, and she thought she was getting down with one brother, and then out of the closet came 4 more brothers to run a train on her. Indoctrination that was internalized and then institutionalized. Let me tell you something, one of the craziest things I ever heard growing up from brothers. See, I'm dealing with mindsets. I'm dealing with all of the stuff that is oppositional to covering. Brother said, we all standing out, hanging out, you know. He said, yeah, I'm going to tell y'all young brothers how to tell if a sister got a venereal disease, so you know not to have sex with her. He said, what you do is you take your finger and you put it in your ear, and you get some wax out your ear, and then you stick it up her vagina. If she jumps, then she's hot. She got a venereal disease. How crazy is that? But the indoctrination can lead to somebody else's belief or beliefs or belief system to be internalized. A lot of women being uncovered can be directly aimed back to the indoctrination, the socialization of many Black males. This thing is deep. Next session, I'm going to really break it open. This is just my intro section. And then hopefully, you know, we'll get some questions and kind of deal with some things and before we're done with this. So I just got like, you know, just a couple minutes more in this, you know, and hopefully you'll come back next month, because we are going to get to serious solution-oriented substance for mutually fulfilling relationships. But it all was lost in paradise. And so there are serious challenges in Black man-woman relationships. What to do, how to do. Some brothers have lost some good women and families. And I'm not seeking to blame, I'm just connecting dots. When this sister said, I don't think Black men love us, I cried. Tears were streaming down my face. How do we get there? How do we get to a point where we are hyping a Super Bowl halftime of some brothers coming out in a prison mindset, and we hyping a brother who walked around with 2 Black women on dog collars with leashes? That's unforgivable. Do we have amnesia? What happened to our cultural memory? All of this stuff impacts us in the I effect, indoctrination, institutionalization. no, internalization and institutionalization. So I'm laying this out like this so that we can actually move forward. You got some questions? Put them in the chat. I'll stop here and we'll just deal with some questions and answers.
I think this just deserves a few seconds. Wow. So as I absorb um, your comments, particularly I hadn't even thought about the Super Bowl halftime from that perspective. You know how it's kind of, you see it, but you let it kind of go past you. So whew, that our mindsets are so jacked up.
Colonized.
Man.
In fact, the slurs of the N-word. Who they gonna tell that to? All the brothers, families who got lynched? That word doesn't mean anything? And that it's now a term of endearment? The babies that were cut out the wombs of mothers in the enslavement. Who are they going to convince that word is okay now? That's uncovering. That's leaving our women uncovered just by our language.
So with that, what are some steps or approaches to re-socialize our men in this area?
Well, to be honest with you, you gave it in your conceptual framework, those 5 steps. But one of the things is this, and this is what I've been on a journey for, and that's why I'm just going in on subjects and topics like these. I am in the process, and brothers, we should be in the process of deconstructing everything that we were indoctrinated in, everything that we have internalized, and everything that institutionalized our minds. We ought to be deconstructing it. It might have sounded cool when we was growing up, but stuff is not conducive to our relationships. If we really want to know if it's really conducive, let's look at the outcomes. I believe that that's one of the very key words to understand. What are the outcomes? To see 2 things. Number one, and my friend Dr. Jerome Crichton had asked me this when we had a discussion about something else last year. He said, what will we say to our children? That's got to be foundational. And the second thing is, I heard Dr. Greg Carr say this, professor at Howard. He says, whatever it is, how does it free us? So if I am leaving my daughter or wife or these sisters uncovered, and I'm calling them the B word, and I'm with a group of brothers and I'm not providing covering when one of them says something against the sisters, and I'm not checking, yo brothers, let's not go there. If I'm just a silent partner, somebody says silence is not always golden, sometimes it's merely yellow. And somebody else said silence is violence. And so if we're not covering them in private conversations or whatever else like that, or our children are seeing What do we say to our children? And are our sons going to come up like that? And are our daughters going to expect not to be covered? We've got to deconstruct that indoctrination, internalization, and institutionalization. The person who has the problem is the one who doesn't know what the problem is. If we know what the problem is, there are remedies, there are solutions. Yeah.
So covering. So Carol Elmore Presley asked about, could you just again go over the definition of covering? So for those who may have come in a little late, we want to make sure that they get caught up.
Basically, covering is actually like a process. Covering is, as I said, a learned principle. Covering is not a rule, it's a principle. You see, we can break rules, but we can't break principle. Principle breaks us. If I obey the principle or the laws of hydrodynamics, I can enjoy the water and swim safely. If I disobey the principle of hydrodynamics, then I can drown. We don't break principle, principle breaks us. So therefore, covering is a principle, a process, and a position that Black men must prioritize to protect the spirit, soul, and body of Black girls and women. That's how I have defined covering. And listen, I use my own definitions. I make up definitions, because I'm always thinking who decides and who decides who decides. If I wasn't included in the decision-making process, it's already been decided for me, and I'm expected to conform. And if I don't, then I'm penalized. Well, I'm going to decide. So that's my definition of covering. It's a principle, a process, a position that should be prioritized to protect the spirit, soul, and body of Black girls and women.
So I want to follow up with a question that's in the chat, but I may modify it a little bit. Walter Hardy asked the question: how do Black women help Black men to listen? What I would add to that is it Black women's responsibility to help Black men in that process?
I'm going to take a different turn on that, on the questions, and answer it this way. How much do we value Black women? What we value, we prioritize. To what degree do we value her as a person, as a human being, as an individual? To what degree do we value her love and respect for us? To what degree do we value her mind, how she thinks, her emotions, how she feels? That answer basically is based on the gradation of value that we place on Black women. And sometimes we can place value on objects more than we do on the people who love us. So it's a challenge for women to get brothers to hear. That's why, and it's interesting because some brothers, man, their filters are so weak. Here's a sister who is passionate when she talks and her voice raises. Oh, now you disrespecting me. You raising your voice. Their whole family talk loud. Their whole family are passionate. But through his filter, it's disrespect. So he didn't miss everything she said because of the filter he's using. We can hear better by taking off our filters and listening to what she's like. I had to do with my daughter to hear what she's saying and talk to her what is concerning her. The onus really is not on her, it's really on us.
So Dr. Tiffany Llewellyn had a question. Where do we begin because of just the pain on both sides of the man-woman relationship?
Well, you know, that's I will pick that up in my next 2 sessions, but I will say this. I told one couple, y'all need to give each other amnesty. You need to give each other amnesty and start over again. But I really, truly believe that many things cannot really mature as they should without intervention. You see, it's difficult for us to see our own face when it's in the frame. But when there's somebody outside of us who has the expertise and who can objectively listen and address things and assist, I believe that that's really, really valuable. And it's not really taken advantage of by men as they are many women. Now, I'll give some brothers their propers. They're brothers who are seeing people now. You know, in my book I'm writing, Black Men Interrupted, that hopefully will come out this summer. I'm pushing this thing because I wrote it 7 years ago, but the spirit say, throw this whole manuscript away and start again. So I just started again about a month ago. But I am recommending that every Black man should see somebody at least once a quarter. Counselor, therapist, psychiatrist, at least once a quarter. That's what I'm advocating. Of course, you know, when I did it in public, said in public presentation, you know, brothers push back on me and stuff like that. That's fine too. But when a brother goes inside with his pain and he say, no, we don't need to see nobody, we can work it out. And she looking at him like, if you can't handle your own stuff, how you gonna handle our stuff? Yeah. So, you know, intervention has to be somewhere at the top of the list. And then there has to be a willingness on both sides. Because as my good friend, Dr. Barbara Tobias said, all relationships are co-created. So it's just not one individual. So there has to be acknowledgement on both sides, a willingness on both sides that we will seek the necessary intervention or whatever we need to get back to square root one, to be able to resolve stuff. But you'll hear more and more substance in our next session and as we move forward. Thank you, Dr. Llewellyn.
It's just this one last, we're going to slip in this one last question, and then we're going to have to go, but hopefully we can jump on the Clubhouse app and engage. So this last question was from Dr. Gerald and Ruby Anderson. How do men best cover without seeming paternalistic?
Wow. There's a delicate balance. And what has kept many of us Black men imbalanced is that patriarchy, the male privilege, the stuff I'll be dealing with next session and so forth. But it's a very delicate balance. But I do know this. She can let us know when we are being paternalistic. Our wife, our lady friend our daughter can let us know, brothers, when we have tipped the scales and we're out of alignment now. So getting the feedback and the communication from them without filters. They are probably our best sounding board. But they can also, the ladies can also let us know, good job, man. Yeah. Yes. I understand. I hear you. And then she can verify back what we have actually said that was, what needed to be said, what was right, what was part of the solution and so forth. We have to, once we value our ladies like they should be valued, we can receive the feedback that we need to receive. Are all women perfect, correct? No, but I'll tell you this. Women read women better than men, and women read men better than men. She'll say, honey, I think that, that sister sweet on you. Nah, she ain't even think about me. And then, you might go somewhere and the sister jack you up in a corner, and then you escape and run home and say, you're right. She said, I told you that 6 months ago. She peeped that, man. They so we can value their input. They can really tell us and share with us when we have gone into the paternalistic side or the patriarchal side or the misogynistic side or the chauvinistic side or whatever else like that, to help guide us back to balance.
I want to thank you so much for this. This was rich, and this is just the beginning. We have 2 more months of this. So please be on the lookout. Mr. Vanderhorst, I hope as you go forward that you touch on even relationships that are not intimate relationships, right? So how do Black men cover the community of Black women? Because some of us can say, oh, I cover my sister, I cover my mother, I cover my wife, but a sister that's I have no relationship with, there may not be that same kind of feeling of the responsibility to cover the community. So I just really appreciate this. Hopefully we can get some of the individuals here for us to tease this out a little bit more on the Clubhouse app in a few moments. But I wanted to thank you. Please look out for more information on our website, liberation-movement.com. You can find more about what we're doing. God bless you, and you have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.
I am the Liberation Movement.
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 I am the Liberation Movement. My name is Dr. Sidney Freeman Jr., and I am the Executive Director and founder of the Liberation Movement, which is a 501c3 organization that works with those who are liberated and seek to be liberated psychologically, socially, and spiritually through educational initiatives. To continue to provide the high quality programming such as Saturday Soul, we need your support. Your consistent monthly investment in the movement will allow us to continue to expand on the excellent work that is already started, such as decolonizing the Black mind curriculum that is already in development. So your gifts of any size via Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal would be a blessing to the advancement of this ministry. Thank you in advance for supporting and joining the Liberation Movement.
Please remember to join Sydney, me, and our special guest today on Clubhouse at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time so we can dive deeper into today's topic. See you soon.